Online at consumerqb.com.
All right, Brandon Grimes here, Consumer Quarterback Show, giving a quick shout out to our friends over at West Coast Window Cleaning, West Coast Premier Windowcleaning.com. Hey, they do a great job on our real estate properties, residential properties, commercial properties. If you're thinking about or would like to get a quote, reach out to them online, West Coast Premier Windowcleaning.com. Residential or commercial properties, they do a great job for us, the Platinum MVP team at Keller Williams Realty, West Coast Premier Window Cleaning. Say hello to Brian and let him know the real estate quarterback sent you. Take him up on those offers. Attorney Jason Kobal coming up here in just a moment. We're going to touch base with him on being represented by an attorney in a car accident and also some of the things happening around Meadows. And then Ray Hall Appraisals coming up here on the program as well. Quick property listing here for the show. We'd like to tell you about our listings that we have here in Tampa Bay. We got some great opportunities. 419 Pallaway in Spring Hill is one of our real estate property listings on our team, and this is a great property here. It's 4 bedrooms, 2 bath, almost 2,100 square feet. Beautiful property here with a 2-car garage. Got a private pool, screened-in pool in the backyard, pavers as well, wood flooring, ceramic tile flooring as well in the property. Kenmore Elite stainless steel appliances, a new refrigerator, master suite, hardwood floors, relaxing garden soak tub, as well as a walk-in shower. Brand new roof on this property, heated pool, screened-in lanai, no backyard neighbors. 419 Pallaway, Spring Hill, and you can see all of our listings at PlatinumCoastalElite.com.
Try that in a small town. See how far you make it down.
All right, going to the phone lines. Attorney Jason Kobal back on the program. Jason, what are you seeing out there, my friend?
Hey, Brandon. Oh, always plenty to see in these crazy times. I was going to give your listeners some tips if they're involved in a car accident case and they're represented. There's a couple things that people should look for in their attorney to make sure they're getting the best representation.
Love it. What are those tips?
Well, first of all, there's a couple of different terrible strategies that some bad personal injury attorneys use, and there's a lot of attorneys want these cases, and there's reasons why. That's why you always see the billboards, and there's a lot of competition among attorneys. So that being the case, I always tell clients they should expect a high level of representation because it's a very competitive field. So you should want the competitors operating at a high level, and not all of them do. If you have a case where your attorney hasn't told you the policy, that's a big red flag for a car accident case because that means everything, meaning the at-fault driver's bodily injury or maybe your policy if you have uninsured motorists. It's really important to know the amount of the policy because a lot of attorneys, what they do is it could be a small policy that covers the accident of like $10,000, and they won't tell their clients that, have their clients rack up bills for $30,000, and then sure, they when they tell the insurance company, here's a case, here's $30,000 in bills, they tender to 10 immediately, but then the client gets next to nothing. The doctors get less than they should, and the only one that gets the right amount is the attorney.
Wow.
So that's why it's important to know what the policy limit is, and if you have a case and you don't know the policy limit, that's a red flag.
Wow. Yeah, that's a borderline. I mean, how do they get away with that?
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't. And in my opinion, it's malpractice and unethical, but there's a lot of bad attorneys out there, and that's definitely something to look out for. So a real simple way to avoid that is if you have an accident and you have an attorney, tell them, look, I want to know what the policy limits are. And that's something that they should be able to figure out relatively quickly. Another example is sometimes attorneys, if it's a large policy case, as opposed to taking doing them what they have to do, taking the hard path if they must, having the client treat up, getting the right evidence, getting the right experts in line, and it might take a year or two to get the maximum, optimal result for the client. A lot of lawyers will not want to go down that road and instead just get a quick settlement so they could get a reasonably decent fee quickly. But really, they're hurting their client because the case is worth a lot more. So be on the lookout for quick settlement shortly after an accident, less than what the policy is. For example, I had a case, I think I told you about this. I had a case not too long ago where the prior attorney recommended the client take $75,000. So he would have made a quick third of that and been able to move on to the next case. Well, that's Client fired him, hired us, and we settled that case 11 months later for $1 million. Same case.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's probably the most disgusting example of that, but it happens.
$75K is what the other attorney was pushing the client to take, and Jason Kobal Law was able to get him $1 million.
That's right. That
Wow.
was the total of the settlement.
I would wait 11 months to get an additional $925,000.
Yeah. And it's disgusting. A lot of people, when I tell that story, they're like, how could that attorney, be that off? And, it's a situation where if it's a huge firm, and I'm not mentioning names or whatever, but if it's a firm that gets a lot of cases, you got to be on the lookout. Make sure you're talking to your attorney. Make sure you know the policy limit. Watch out for the quick settlements, because a lot of those guys, a lot of the bad attorneys, they'll take a quick attorney fee hit, move on to the next case because they know they're always going to be a next case,
right?
As opposed to doing what needs to be done to get the optimal result, which
Jason,
might take longer.
Are you able to say, look, I'd like to get a second opinion? How does the client approach that?
Yeah, no, if you're represented by an attorney, you can talk to other attorneys to see if they would want to take over the case, and if they do, you could fire their attorney that you have, and then move on to the next one. And then there's an attorney fee that will be involved in the case, but it'll be the same regardless of the number of attorneys you have, and it's just that they'll have to work out a negotiation as who gets what when there's multiple attorneys. So a lot of people think, if I fire this attorney, it's going to cost me double if I get another one. That's not the case.
Ah, okay. Got it. All right, we're talking with attorney Jason Kobal here on the Consumer Quarterback Show. I'm your host, Brandon Rhymes. Jason, what else are you saying? You had mentioned something about, was it Meadows?
Oh, yeah. Of course, we had history this week with the House of Representatives, Speaker of the House, actually McCarthy.
Yeah.
Is what happened with Gates. It's interesting. It's crazy time in politics, but you know how I feel about the establishment politicians, and
yep.
For what it's worth, I feel McCarthy is one in disguise. So I wasn't terribly upset over what happened, but I really have no sympathy for him, because to get that speakership, he's the one who agreed that it would just take one member to ask for the motion to vacate to possibly get him booted, and that's what happened. So I hope they don't. I heard that they might take action against those 8 that were got him booted. I hope not, because they were just following the rules that he agreed to, and he didn't have to do that. But yeah, crazy times.
Well, we have to push back against this record spending, these challenges that we're having. We're spending all this money overseas, and we're neglecting the southern border. And the biggest thing too is it makes so much sense to have single subject spending bills. Why would we not want to have, as we the people, taxpayers, why would we not want to have single subject spending bills that, if you wanted to send money, because that's what they do, right? They have these omnibuses the way it is now. And then the other thing Gates was fighting for is the 72-hour rule. Hey, what's wrong with having 3 days to read over this documentation? We don't want to do, the slam it through type of thing.
Great points. If you listened to the arguments that he was making, and you heard the responses from the 200 Republicans, that the loudest they got was when he commented, and all the Republicans who got up there and said, we passed this bill, we passed this bill on the border, we passed this bill, but none of those bills have become law because they didn't get approved in the Senate. So what good is that? So he called that out, and they all booed, because they don't want the people to know that really they haven't accomplished a whole lot.
Yeah, no, exactly.
On either side.
And the other thing that's happening right now is this witch hunt continuing against President Trump. It's absolutely ridiculous, where you've got that. From what I've heard, is that it's going to be roughly a $250 million fine, and Lady Justice is supposed to have where first of all, you shouldn't have a partisan judge that's a hard left Democrat standing, on the bench, but essentially you have where they're going after him, and this is a punitive $250 million does not fit the alleged crime of supposedly overvaluing some of your assets. We got Ray Hall appraisals coming up here in just a moment. We're going to talk about the valuation process of assets, but what's your thoughts on that?
Oh my God, I'm glad you brought that case up. It drives me crazy. I think out of all the political cases that they've thrown at him, this is the worst one. There's no victim. The banks, they could have charged whatever interest rate they wanted. If they felt that the valuation was too high, they could have got an expert of their own. the interest or the insurance, their premiums could have been higher or lower, or they could have rejected them if they didn't feel the application was worthy. So where's the injury here? It's just disgusting. And then for the judge, in the judge's decision, it says that the value of Mar-a-Lago was valued at $18 million. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, how's that not fraud?
Yeah.
So really, but, not to get into the weeds, but there's actually an appellate decision that came out that, in my opinion, makes about 80% of this case null and void. So it's kind of like they're just going through the motions. So I really do not think they're going to get anywhere near $250 million if they get anything, and I do believe that it would probably get reversed on appeal. So that's what I expected. But like all these cases, it's not really about winning the cases and them not getting overturned on appeal. It's about stopping Trump from winning the election.
Yeah, because he even said, I should be in Iowa right now. I should be campaigning. This is election interference. So we've got Ray Hall in the studio here. I wanted to go to Ray here in that question of Mar-a-Lago, one of the premier properties in the United States, in the Northern Hemisphere, for that matter, valuing at $18 million. Doesn't that seem a bit low?
It does, because you got to remember, Mar-a-Lago, a lot of people mistakenly think it's a house.
Right.
It's a resort.
Right.
It's a resort that generates income. From what I've read recently, in 2020, it made about $23 million.
Wow.
So they're saying it's worth less than what it generates.
It's kicking off that much cash.
That's a deal of the century. I mean, I'm sure I could find a bunch of private money guys to give me the money to buy that if that's what it's doing.
Yeah.
So, part of valuation is you take into consideration that income, and then you apply what's called a capitalization rate.
Yep.
And if you apply a decent cap rate to that income, it's a lot more than $18 million. I'll tell you
Absolutely.
that much.
Yeah, it's just more partisan games, Jason. It's they're weaponizing the justice system against their adversary, plain and simple.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And the way they came up with that, I guess it was a tax assessment, and it doesn't even take into account the brand. But the fact that Mar-a-Lago, that's a Trump property. That in and of itself probably adds some value, but I'm sure the expert on the line with me would know better than me.
Well, it's also a historical property.
Right.
And, that impacts its value. So now you can't just go to because I can assure you the tax assessors do what's called a mass appraisal.
Right.
That's why your assessed value is so much less than what your house is worth. It's a different kind of appraisal. It's not market value.
Right.
Plus, you have to, consider that it's a historical property. It was built in the 1920s. For I can't remember her name, but so it's got a lot of components to it. It's not as easy as just finding something similar and slapping a value on it.
Yeah.
And especially, $18 million in South Florida. That's a house down there.
Oh, yeah. That's a regular house, a small, especially in the Palm Beach area that he's in. That's an exclusive neighborhood.
Right. Let's take a look at here in Tampa. Derek Jeter's old house just sold for $20 million.
Yeah.
It's a house on 5 lots, not an entire resort that generates income. So that's how ridiculous $18 million kind of is when it comes to that property.
Yeah. And as much as I like Tampa and Tampa Bay, Palm Beaches, that's still a much more higher end area, as you would call it, Palm
higher
Beach.
Value.
Yeah, higher value county in general than Hillsborough. And then I think even second would be Collier County, where you have Naples and, that area there as well.
Absolutely.
But let's we're going to come back with Ray Hall Appraisals. Let's say goodbye to Jason Kobal, attorney Jason Kobal. Thanks for those insights. And how do you want people to connect with you, Jason?
Oh, well, they can find me at tampaworkcomplaw.com on the internet, or call the show.
There you go. Call the show, Tampa Work Comp Law, and consumerqb.com. You can see links there to all of our expert contributors. You can see Jason's show card, Ray Hall's show card, consumerqb.com, and, of course, you can call the show. We'll put you in touch. All right, taking a quick break. Coming back, Ray Hall Appraisals on the Consumer Quarterback Show. We're going to talk about the current state of the economy, real estate world as well, coming up with Ray Hall. Check us out online, consumerqb.com.
Hey, this is Grant Cardone, and you've been listening to the phenomenal Brandon Rhymes, the Consumer Quarterback Show.